Oops. Welcome back to the VA Rebellion podcast, the podcast for virtual assistant business owners who are done winging it, done being just the admin, and ready to run a real business with real confidence and profit. This is the show where we challenge 8 outdated industry norms, raise the standard for what it means to be a VA, and talk honestly about building a business that feels powerful, profitable, and aligned. Today's conversation is all about networking, and not the awkward, transactional, business card swapping version most people dread. Because when networking is done well, it's not about selling yourself. It's about relationships, positioning, and long-term opportunity. And I couldn't think of a better person to unpack this with than today's guest. I'm joined by Jon Sermon, who heads up the Partnerships and Alliance team at Your Empire Buyers Agents, where he helps clients save money and navigate the often complex world of property buying. Jon is known for his strong communication skills, sharp eye for detail, and genuine ability to make people feel valued, whether he's negotiating a property deal, building strategic partnerships, or pairing a great wine with a perfectly folded pocket square. He works with everyone from investors, CEOs, and family offices through to first-time buyers, and he thrives on building trust, forging meaningful connections, and guiding people towards their goals. Jon is also the co-founder of Bio, a relationship-led networking community, which makes him the perfect person to talk about how networking really works when it's done with intention. Jon, welcome to the VA Rebellion podcast. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Well, good morning. That was quite the introduction. Even though I did write it myself, wasn't ChatGPT. That was a load of waffle on my part. But good morning, Kerrie. How are you?
Good, thanks, and thank you so much for joining us. I think I always enjoy our conversations, and you're very well versed in how to build relationships and networking. So let's get into it, I think. So,
Absolutely.
Jon, I wanted to start here, and because for a lot of VAs, the word networking instantly brings up images of awkward conversations, forced selling, or feeling like they don't belong in a room. From your perspective, how do you define good networking, and where do you think people get it wrong right from the start?
I think you've used two words already a few minutes into this podcast. One is intent, and the other is selling. And I think so. To reframe it, don't think of it as selling. Think of it. I often think of networking as a high-performance sport. So if we want to get fitter, stronger, healthier, we go to the gym, we go running, we watch what we eat. That takes discipline, that takes a routine, that takes a regimen, that takes getting outside your comfort zone. Many of us, it's January, we might have kind of quit the alcohol for January. And if some of us that love a glass of wine like me, that's incredibly uncomfortable because I do like a glass of wine and it helps me unwind, and I actually genuinely like learning about wine. So I like to think about networking as something that it gets people uncomfortable. It should help you grow. So therefore, think of it as a high performance activity rather than a run of the mill, I have to go to a sales event. I often reframe it as well. And because I moved over here in 2010, so I'm an expat. Yes, I would go there to sell services when I first moved here. But I think initially it was all about what can I learn? Who can I meet? Because I didn't know anyone when I first moved over here. I had a handful of friends through business, through work. So a lot of it was, well, in a partnership role, and this would be the same with VAs as well, because VAs are the wheelhouse of their business. They are. I almost like them to the octopus on bread knobs and broomsticks. With the drum kits and stuff. They're just doing everything all the time. That puts you in a very, very powerful position. So how can you keep learning and keep knowing and keep growing and keep thinking of people to meet to solve your clients' problems? And that's, for me, is how I reframed it. First of all, I've not always been great at networking. I've always been good with people and I'm very comfortable around people, but reframing it to what can I learn? Who can I meet? What problems can I solve for other people? Takes away the pressure of that kind of 30-second elevator pitch. And to your point, giving someone a paper cut with a business card.
Yes, I love it. I can tell you that when I first started networking, I was very nervous as well. So I've been there and I've done that. So I know what our viewers are feeling.
Yeah. And I often say, I often get the question around where should I start? And so I guess a lot of the VAs, they're running their own business. It's their first time. They might be balancing business with life as well. And a great place to start when you think about going to a networking event is don't even think of it as networking, but take away that kind of onus on the sales and networking bit and go to just an event where there's a commonality. I was doing a talk up in Brisbane and I said, if you're a Queensland Reds supporter, which is a rugby team up north, go to one of their community events because at least everybody in the room is probably going to be a Reds supporter. Again, if you like wine, go to a wine tasting event. If you like golf, go to a golf day because at least you've got that base level of commonality where you can talk about the subject matter, i.e. sport, whatever. And then naturally, as you relax and the conversation flows, it will come out, what brings you here? What do you do for work? And then, of course, you can start talking about what it is you do for business and a little bit more about you.
So considering everything's quite digital these days in our business, you're still a huge advocate for in-person and relationship-based networking. So why do you believe that networking is still one of the most powerful growth tools in business, even in a digital-first world?
Because we still do business with people. Even when you get your Uber Eats, someone delivers it. And it's nice to say thank you. It's nice to meet them at the door. So we're still doing business with people. And so the digital first element, yes, that can expedite things. It can make you seem more proactive. It can make you process things quicker. But ultimately, we've still got to engage back and forth and have a conversation. And I think at the moment, and we're talking 23rd of January 2026, at the moment, digital is very good at just solving a problem. How are you today? I'm fine, thank you very much. Or even a more closed kind of question. It's good at doing a task. When I think you're speaking with someone, the conversation can flow. It can cruise. The old saying is everything happens around the water hole. There couldn't be a truer word said. How many offices have you been in? How many times have you been having a coffee with someone and an idea will pop into your head because of something they've said? So I think if we're thinking about digital as a tool, the human interaction is super important. And I think as well, especially if you are a VA, where I can imagine you're either working from home or working in perhaps a co-working space, maybe in a little solo desk, just for your own learning, your own growth, your own kind of mental wellness, getting out there and meeting people is so good for the soul. We are community people. We used to live in tiny little villages back in the day. That's how we are. And I'm a huge people person. I'm horrible working on my own. But no, I think that's how digital is great, but remember it is a tool. But you definitely still got to interact with people.
Absolutely. I think it's been a really good growth tool, particularly for my business, the whole networking scene. And I did exactly what you said. I went in and I'm just like, I don't know what my elevator pitch is. I don't know any of those things. So how can I help you? What problem do you have? And focused on them. So it took a lot of that pressure off.
Yeah, and there's a natural, with humans as well, there's a natural reciprocity. So it's a bit like when someone says, how's your day going? Or how are you? There's a natural, well, how are you doing? And again, it's to your point, how can I help you? There will be a natural, well, what is it you do? How can I help you? Or there'll be a natural curiosity. And again, this is where I'll always tie it back to being a high performance sport because there's a bit of vulnerability there. And so that's also, a trait of being a high performer. And so that's part of being in that role as well. So that's, for me, a good place to start.
Awesome. So one of the things that I see a lot of the people attending events, but without any real intention, like they're busy, they're not strategic. So before someone even walks into a networking room, what should they actually be clear on beyond just meeting people?
I think it depends on the nature of the event. And so there are an abundance of events out there at the moment. So you might get like keynote talks. You might get kind of panel conversations. You might get more experience-based things like, we certainly do at Bio and Chambers of Commerce would do as well. So I think understand what event works for you, because and we've learned this through running events. So if you have perhaps a one keynote person, there's there's an engagement to that person, but there's not really an opportunity for people to talk. When there's a panel kind of conversation or something like this, people can think, and they're almost the third or fourth person in the room as well. If it's more experience based, perhaps like a wine tasting or putt or at a restaurant, there's a really open place for people to converse. And so again, I think go in there with the intention of actually participating. Don't just go in there and stand in the corner and kind of nibble at your canapé and all of that kind of stuff. And again, it's super uncomfortable. But I think as well, go in there with intention. I have a saying, kind of walk in like you mean it, you know. There's probably a reason I wear bright colour blazers is because they make an impact, right? And they probably talk before I talk. So people always see you in the room, and it's a bit of an icebreaker. And so perhaps prepare a little icebreaker. You know, don't talk about the weather. And maybe set yourself just a little goal of, hey, I want to learn one thing. I want to meet one more person and learn something. A cool little tool I thought for VAs is understand. So let's say, for example, if you're a VA that works in the legal profession, maybe get a sense of who are the top 10 or 20 people or the top 10 or 20 problems that you're solving on a regular basis. And so who could you have in your network? Who could you meet to then complement that? And so then almost write a list of, well, who do I want to meet? You know, and that then helps when you're walking around the room, because if you're at a good event, it should be very comfortable, almost like a dinner party, very warm. And you could say, oh, is there anyone that does X here? A lot of my experience is people will normally whiz you over and say, hey, Kerrie meet so-and-so meet Kerrie. You know, she was keen to learn a little more about what you do. So I think that's a good little thing to prepare when you're actually just going into the event. Another thing as well is maybe take a mate, you know, give yourself a little bit of safe space, divide and conquer, but say, hey, I'll be back in 15 minutes. You know, if I'm still talking to that same man or woman, yeah, come and kind of rescue me a little bit as well, because that can happen too. But make it fun, but go there to participate. You know, I think to your point around the whole digital side of things, I think participation is going to be the currency of 2026. The amount of opportunities, the amount of relationships that I've forged over the years, not through cold calling these people from a 9 to 5, it's because they see me at the same events. And so they're working just as hard as I am. And they're grinding it out, and they're meeting people, and they're doing the same stuff. And they're like, right, I want to work with him because he's hanging out at the same events I do. He's working just as hard, and because we're learning from each other. But try and speak to them throughout the day. They're busy people that you can't do it. So sometimes to get to your ideal client, you go to the event because that's where they're relaxing a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And very, very true. So how do you recommend business owners choose the right networking rooms for the stage of their business? Because that's often a difficult thing to work out.
I mean, this is literally just a sharpening of the pencil. If you imagine a marketing funnel, you know, the top of the marketing funnel is very wide, and then you narrow down over time. That's just a time thing, if I'm going to be brutally honest. Again, I think if you were starting out, you've just started a business, to your point earlier, you're not perhaps sure on your elevator pitch, you know, you're going to fumble your way through it. Go to somewhere where you feel comfortable. Go to your local chamber of commerce, go to whatever thing you like to do, go to that, practice it. Just speak to people, because you'll have a natural comfort around that. Then meet people. And I think, again, when you're first in business, you know, the biggest test is getting the first client. It's proof of concept. So whatever that client is, get them. They're probably not going to be your ideal client. It's probably going to be a favor from a good friend who says, hey, I'll help you, you know? And then it's just a moment in time, and you'll find out over years, actually, I prefer working with doctors, or prefer working with lawyers, or I prefer working in the professional services space, or actually I'm really good at the trades side of things. Because there will be a natural draw and a natural pull to what resonates with you. For example, in the property space, we naturally draw time poor professionals because they're making money throughout the day. they're running their own business, or they're executives, or they're busy building a business, or they're busy earning money. They don't have time to go and look at 10, 20, 30 properties to work out if it's a good investment or if it's a good home or not. So that's where we know our ideal clients are, but we've found that out over the last 20 years. And you'll always get an anomaly. And I think as the longer you go on in business, then you go, and actually, I just like working with you. And so you kind of get this bell curve where you're helping everybody. You then niche. And then as you get better and better, you go, actually, more people find out about your business. And you go, oh, yeah, I don't mind helping you because I like you as a person. And it doesn't matter what industry they're in, because you've learned that your processes and procedures are down pat. So you can then start to help everybody.
No, I love that. They talk a lot about niching at the beginning, and I often don't necessarily agree with that because of that exact thing. You don't know until you start working with the people in those industries.
Yeah, and look,
they're the right fit.
Yeah, and it sounds great. And I think it's good from a marketing, from a sales point of view, because you can say I work with X. I'd rather say we're specialists than generalists. So where do we specialise? We specialise in buying in Sydney. We can still help first-time home buyers and investors and downsizers, but we specialise there. So, it could be we specialise in helping lawyers or the legal profession. So you're still helping all those layers, whether it's a sole practitioner or a managing partner or a partner or an associate, but you're still there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think the difference is between networking for visibility versus networking for opportunities, and how should VAs kind of approach each without burning themselves out?
I think do both, actually. I've learnt over the years that it's okay to turn up to an event just to be seen. And that's perhaps where you go to more the experienced ones, because then I think when they are tend to be a little bit more relaxed, and then things just flow. And so again, it's a bit like why I love working in the city, because you then bump into people in the city, you'll bump into people at events, and you're not even looking to see them or speak to them or engage them or even pitch them for business. But because you're there, you naturally have a conversation, and it's because of the type of event that you go to where you're able to. So sometimes I think go there for visibility, and also you don't know who you're going to meet. My mum and dad, they used to take us. I'm a child of four. I'm the baby of four. They used to take us to the theatre and things all the time. And sometimes I'd be like, "Who is this? What is this?" And they used to say, "You don't know until you go." And why not? And the thing is, you could meet your ideal client. You never know. I used to sit on the train when I used to go work in London in the UK, and everybody's quiet on the train. And I used to sit there and go, I wonder if people just spoke how much business could be done on this train.
What would it be?
How much more productive would it be, to talk about solving stuff? But so I think go there to be visible, but also then go to ones where there's definite opportune. And that could be an industry event. You could go to an industry event to be visible, perhaps an award side of things. But I think don't be afraid to mix it up, because you will feel different at different events. If I go to something that's a bit more keynote or presentation, where there's not that time to talk, I'm kind of in sponge mode where I'm absorbing. But if I go to maybe like a bio that we run, or we go to like a chamber of commerce that's a bit more experience based, then you just do laps of the room and talk to people, and it's a bit more relaxed.
It's very good. I love the bio.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the genesis of that really was my previous job, because I've always worked in partnerships. Was I used to work in money transfers in foreign exchange, and so I would talk to an inordinate amount of people solving one problem, which was making a payment. And then I kind of thought, well, actually, you guys need to know that person, and that person might be interested in that. And okay, well, you're transferring money over to buy a house. Do you need finance for the house, or do you need a buyer's agent to buy a house, or you're moving over? Do you need a visa agent? So we spoke about intent earlier. I would be very intentional of who I then spoke to say, hey, I've got a client who needs a visa, or I've got a client who needs to buy a property. Can you help them? So again, it was just that problem solver side of things, which was how bio turned up, because then those people then just said, well, let's let's get together on a monthly basis and then just compare notes and try and take over the world. Yeah.
So let's get a little bit practical. So what actually makes someone memorable in a networking environment without being pushy or salesy?
I don't think we should overcook this. It's very simple. Why do we remember when we get good service from a restaurant, get good service getting a coffee? Why do we remember maybe a certain bus driver? You know, he could lower the bus to help an old lady out, an old man out. It's just be authentic. Just be kind, be authentic, be curious, and ask questions. I mean, again, be memorable for something as well. And again, so I will wear bright color blazers. You know, that's my thing. I used to be socks, but then someone copied me, so I was like, right, no one's going to copy these crazy color blazers. But be memorable, and that can be by what you wear, or it can be by just the questions you're asking, or your demeanor, or your persona. You know, it's the old saying: people never forget how you make them feel. And so, if you hammer your pitch to someone, and we've all been there, they're gonna clam up. They're gonna feel and when you maybe call them back after the event, they're not gonna pick the phone up because oh gee, I remember that guy in the blazer and he was just giving me the hairdryer about what he did and I didn't even ask, you know. Whereas I think if you spin it and you become curious, and you become just who you are. I mean, we're all human. Then it opens the door from another side. And I think for me, networking, I always play the ultimate long-term game. You know, I think a lot of people think of networking as a silver bullet. I'll go to one event and I'll hit my target for the year. I'll go to one event and I'll get my ideal client. It doesn't happen that way. I wish it did. You know, we'd be having this conversation in a penthouse somewhere.
Yeah, don't we all?
Absolutely. But I think, again, this is where it comes to the discipline of doing it. So again, it comes back to the sport analogy. You know, your teeth don't get white after you brush them once. They get white over years, and there's other things you do. Don't drink too much coffee, don't smoke, all that kind of stuff. It's the same with networking. Like, you've just got to continue doing it. And so I think a lot of people fall into the trap of, oh, I went to one and it was horrible. Okay, there's thousands out there. Try the one that works for you. So I think from a practical tips, you know, be a sponge, keep listening, ask good questions, and ask open-ended questions. You know, for those that perhaps aren't aware, you have kind of closed questions, which is normally the answer you're trying to get is a yes or a no, or an open-ended question is, you know, what's the plans for the weekend? That's then, again, it's a curiosity bit, you know, so what got you into this level? And then when you then show that, people remember, again, kind of how you made them feel from that side. I think as well, have a bit of a system in place. People are busy, especially if you go to a lot of networking events. You'll often see people with cards in their inside pocket and things. Circle back after the event. I often will do a little LinkedIn request. You know, I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, but I'm kind of quality rather than quantity. And I'll, you know, hi Kerrie, great to meet you last night at the, you know, mention the event at the bio event or BNI or the Chamber of Commerce event or the wine tasting. You know, how good was that red? Personalize it again. Make them remember you. Yeah, would love to connect and learn more about your business. So you're not selling anything. You're being curious, and then when they then connect, or if you've got their number, maybe in a week, hi Kerrie, look, I just wanted to circle back. It was great meeting you at the event. Would love to tee up a time for a coffee, just to learn more about what you do. Because it might, the benefit of asking questions first and learning more is you might not be their ideal client, or vice versa. There might not be the fit. So if you go in with your pitch, then you've wasted a lot of breath and there's no real opportunity. And so by asking first, you then almost can understand if there is a requirement, you know?
And they may not be your ideal client, but they might have the solution to some of the things your client needs anyway. So regardless, absolutely, there's still a potential opportunity.
Yeah. And the people I've met over the years, there's some people that we've never, ever done business with each other, yet we still catch up on a monthly basis and we will literally compare notes. And it will be along the lines of, you know, what problems are you having? How's business? How's life? Because, you know, you get to that stage of life where things happen. I was just listening to a podcast with Stephen Bartlett and Anthony Robbins, and he was talking about your life is in seasons, which I thought was a beautiful kind of way to put it, very visual. And it was, in your 20s and 30s, just be a risk taker, just breathe it in, try everything, don't stress too much. In your 30s and 40s, you start to then learn about what it is you like, and you start to kind of crystallize out and make a career. Your 40s and 50s, you've built your network, you really know what you want, and you just run hard, to then hopefully retire in your mid 60s and 70s, but then even just keep going if you're loving it. And it was just a really nice timeline to, especially for the younger generation, probably some younger VAs, to go, well, if you're in your 20s and 30s, there's nothing wrong with that. But try helping everybody. Try and help everybody in different networks to work out where you want to go. And then kind of start to bring it in as you go. We spoke about that funnel earlier. So that when you're in your 40s and your 50s, if you're still doing it, you might have 100, 200, 50 of your ideal clients that pay you a lot, but they're probably just in one space where you've worked out you can help. So I think have a bit of a system as well in your follow-up, and don't expect the sale straight away. Like build the relationship. Always lead with, how can I help? What's going on in your world?
Yeah, that's good. So there's a really big thing for VAs, and it's kind of how should someone talk about what they do without underselling themselves, but also without over-explaining or apologizing? Do you have any
I work
ideas?
in real estate. I have to apologize all the time. A bit like recruiters and car salespeople. Um, I think, to be honest, I think it's actually how you articulate it. And I mean in terms of your posture. I always pull up. I've got a few friends actually say I'm just a PT or I'm just a coach. So I'm like, why are you saying just? You are a PT and you're a great PT. You are a great coach. Why are you saying just? It's like own what you do, because then people will believe in you. And so I don't think you should ever be unapologetically you, because you're you. So I think in terms of how to articulate that, telling stories is a great way. I think in today's world, we are so overstimulated with notifications, with content, with interactions. The phone no longer just rings, it pings, it vibrates, because if people miss you on the call, they then text you, and then you get the voicemail, you then get the email, you then get the WhatsApp message, you get the LinkedIn, you get the Instagram. We are just so like, wow. So if you're trying to get a message across, it can be so easily lost, because people are busy doing things. I don't know if they're busy, but they're just firefighting sometimes. And so storytelling, I find, is a great way of getting your value across and getting your business across. And the thing is, because it's a story, you're not actually selling, it's more conversational. So I might say, for example, I might be out with my friends, or I might be at an event, and how's your week been? Oh, it's great, actually. We're actually working with people they have not even lived here yet. They're just moving to Australia, so I'm actually showing them around, looking at property over the last few weeks, and we're kind of looking at the northern beaches and eastern suburbs and the inner west, because they want to get a sense of what it's all about. Well, that's interesting. Tell me more. And so in your world, it could be, it's actually been quite a full-on week, because I've just started working with a tradie. He's got a load of subbies that he has to do work for and admin for. So we've just been onboarding all of those processes and understanding what that kind of cadence is like from a reporting side of things. And actually, we've just done our first week, and it turns out we've given him 17 hours of his life back, because he hasn't got to do that, or his wife hasn't got to do that. Because normally with tradies, it's the other half, right? It's the partner that does it. And I know why you're smiling, Kerrie. So I think sometimes stories is a really just inoffensive and gentle way of articulating what you do. But also it gives someone a visual kind of representation of what it is you do. Because I think certainly for me, when we first met, I wasn't really aware of what a VA was, because it's got different kind of connotations. So is it VA overseas? Is it VA here? And so where are they? What do they do? And so I think certainly with someone as generic as VA, stories helps articulate the value proposition, because I can imagine there's some VAs that will focus on one area and other VAs that focus on the other areas. And so what is that? It's a bit like an accountant or an advisor, a bit like any service provider. Us as buyers agents, we focus on a certain type of purchase. We don't buy everything and anything. And so again, it's telling the stories, then people then hone in on, okay, you do that then. All right. So you wouldn't be a good fit for there. No. Okay. But do you know anyone that would? Yeah, sure. Like, no worries at all. And that's where your network comes back.
That's right. It's so important. I kind of love the fact I, like, probably in the last 18 months in my consistent networking, I now become my clients. I'll just ask Kerrie. She'll know someone. So it pays off in more than one way. So it's good to be known as the problem solver. If you don't know the person, ask them. They most likely do. So it's nice to be that person and actually have a network that can support your clients in multiple levels.
Yeah. And to going back to your point earlier on about in a digital world, my belief is the people that survive and the people that will flourish and keep going and keep building are the people with a network.
Yes.
The people that can add value, the people that everybody else comes to them to say, can you help me? Because they know that over the years, you've just been collecting, and that sounds a bit crude, but you've just been collecting these people, these problem solvers for your world. And so I do think the ability to add value will help in the digital age, because everybody else is just doers. It's amazing how many people, and I won't name names, but it's amazing how many people in my world that don't go to events. Waste of time, not going to a networking event. As soon as they lose a job, John, do you know a recruiter? And I do, of course I do. It amazes me. Amazes me.
Because you go.
That's true. That is true. But again, it's like, well, you should be known, And again, so I'd always challenge people, especially in corporate, and we're getting off the VA bit, is, everybody needs to have a network. Even mums at the school gate, that's a network. Again, it doesn't have to be business related as well. This is, I think, another place where people fall down, is they attribute it to selling and they attribute it to work as well. Whereas it could just be personal, How many Facebook groups out there? You've
so many.
But that's a network, that's a community. And so that's a great place to start.
And that's what we create with Viva. We've got our membership community to help with that networking as well internally, so that we can help each other. But it's funny that you mention, that corporate, and when I was in corporate, networking wasn't even like in the roles that I was in corporate, you didn't network. That was for the big dogs at the top.
Yeah.
They understood it, but everyone else doesn't. But it's a lot of the VAs will come from a corporate background. So it's really valuable for them to understand, if they're thinking of going out, that they should probably start networking now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll tell you what networking events do, and this could also be a lunch. I also do the platform that works for you. I love a long lunch. What a long lunch does, it gives you time. When you're doing cold calls and you're doing 50 or 100 cold calls a day, you don't have time with your prospect. At an event, you have time. If you're curating a lunch, maybe with your clients or your network, it gives you time with people. And I think that's the bit, is because people do business with people. Even in a digital world, you'll still do business with people. And people do business with people that they like to do business with. There has to be a bit of a commonality, You don't have to be best friends, but they have to see the value, or they have to see a kinship of something.
So why do you think so many people attend networking events but never really see a real return from them? What is it that they're missing, or they're kind of a little bit off with?
Because they don't attend enough. They give up. They go to one and it wasn't for them, or they had a bad experience. I think that's it. It's as I said, kind of bringing it back to the high performance kind of attitude. It's something that you just have to do. think of it like marketing. Marketing for businesses you just leave on. It's always on. Why? Because it's just something that you just continue to do. And I think that's the same with networking. You don't have to do it every day or every week. Set yourself a comfortable cadence that's achievable for you. It could be once a month. Could be once a quarter. I think it should be, if you're building a business, I think it should be as a minimum once a month. But I think most people, they'll go to one, it wasn't for me. And then they'll just turn them off the idea. And that's where I think if you start with what's common for you, what's comfortable, build it organically.
So how can service providers like the VAs kind of position themselves as referral partners rather than just another contact in someone's phone?
I think by giving first is often a really good way. Because then, so for the uneducated, so if you don't know what a VA does, or you're a bit skeptical, or you may have been burnt before, I think by giving first is a really good way of showing your value, and almost surprising. And that comes back to the kind of how can I help? So if on this side you've got your collection of people, of problems that you can solve, you can talk to that with potential prospects, with potential clients, and you might say, "Hey, Kerrie, I understand people in your world normally have this problem. If you like, I can connect you with so and so who we work with that can help that, and maybe you can ask him how he or she goes working with us." So I think by flipping the script, by giving first, I think is a really good way to show value. We do it a lot. I set myself a little soft KPI of giving a referral a day, because what it enables me to do is pick up the phone and have a conversation, then pick up the phone to someone else and have a conversation. And then, of course, what happens is if you become the person that's the giver, but in a value way, you're always adding value. Whenever you call, they'll pick up the phone. But if you call and you're always wanting something, you'll go to voicemail. So that's how you kind of flip the script, or that's how I flip the script from that side of things.
I also find it's much easier to do it from that way too, because like we said earlier, it takes the sales pressure off because you're actually not trying to sell, just trying to help.
And it feels good.
Yeah, it does feel really
Doesn't
good.
Doesn't it feel good to help someone?
Yes.
Doesn't it feel good?
It does.
I mean, have you ever bought the big issue with the city and then just given it back to the person to sell again?
No, I haven't. I haven't seen very many lately.
It's a great way to do it. There you go. Give the person the money. There you go. Sell that again. I tell you, a little random act of kindness. Here we go. Here's a good thing I started to do in 2023. When you're waiting for a coffee, and you get the best reactions from people because some people are just not used to it, or some people are like, "Oh wow!" So you're waiting for your coffee, and the person behind you say, "What can I get you?" And they're like, "What?" I said, "Do you want a coffee?" And you might do it once a week, right? But the idea is just pay it forward. But it feels good, so they feel good because they've got free coffee, and they've spoken to a random guy in a colourful blazer. You feel good. And it's just smile, right? It just feels good. Why not?
I'm quite conscious of how we treat retail staff specifically.
Yeah.
Very often they don't get the thank you, the smiles. They just get the grunt or the groan and the aggro face from most people in a retail space. And I'm way more conscious to actually thank them for the service that they've provided.
Yeah.
Especially when it's good.
Yeah, and it costs nothing to be kind, does it really?
No, not at all.
And in the grand scheme of things, we're incredibly lucky to be where we are, this side of the world. And the good thing is about Australia, certainly for the VAs out in your community that are starting out, Aussies love an entrepreneur. They will back an entrepreneur. How do you get behind them? And so it's a great place to be to start a business.
Yeah. We love a good underdog.
But you've got to participate. This is the thing. You've got to be in the room where your clients are, where your referral network is. You've got to participate. I know you get the pictures of the Steve Jobs and the Atlassians in their tiny little sheds and all that kind of stuff, but they still went out there and built something. They, it
They
wasn't
had to
all from
talk to
that
people
desk.
to sell it.
They had to talk to people.
Yep.
Indeed.
So from your work as a buyer's agent, advisors and business owners, from working with all of those people, what makes someone a true go-to person in a network?
I think that's a very good question. I think it's kind of what you stand for, your values. I think people get a sense of who you are, how you make them feel, how they feel when you're speaking to them and dealing with them, and they align with your values. And so, again, to your point, when someone picks up the phone to you and asks for, do you know, you probably provide them with a very safe space to ask that question. And they know because of your values that you're going to introduce them to someone that shares those values. It's a term I like to use called social proof. Kind of very much what bio is built on. Really, it's that kind of premise of it's kind of referral network in terms of bringing people in, because then that's the social proof element. So I think if you start with your intention, and this was a word you used right at the start, so what's your intent, what's your values, people get to know that, and that's how you become, I think, the center of the world. And then you kind of build your Rolodex, your professional Rolodex. And I think you go from it that way. I mean, I often joke and say I've got an illness where my brain's just like a Rolodex. And sometimes if I'm in a meeting, people will stop and they'll go, what are you thinking? Who are you thinking of? Because they can just see it going. It's exhausting sometimes.
I know. I do that sometimes when someone's telling me their stuff. I'm like, oh, I need to connect them with such and such. But then, because I'm so impatient, I have to wait until they're finished talking before I can make that suggestion. So it's fun in that aspect, and I like being able to connect people in that way.
Yeah, I think, and to that though, because something I have learnt, and look, this is me honing this and still learning over the last 20 plus years, right? So I still get it wrong. But I think something to be mindful of is when you're collecting your people, they need to share your values, things like curiosity, authenticity. So a lot of people that I will connect or introduce, it's kind of like, hi, Kerrie, I've got a friend who's just curious to learn about what you do. So that's not saying, hey, sell yourself to high heaven and, whatever. Like you kind of position it in terms of they're curious. So then you align yourself with those people that are just going to do the right thing from a business pitch side of things as well. They're not just going to hammer and tong and all that kind of stuff. But again, that comes in time. You learn that, in the same way you refine your clients, you refine your network over time. My mum has a great saying, you got friends for a reason, friends for a season, friends for life. It's not too dissimilar with your professional network. And if you're super lucky, some of your professional network become your friends, I mean, a great story to talk about kind of the long-term relationship. I can talk about this all day, Kerrie, so you might have to cut me off. When I look at where I am now in terms of working at your empire, that came from a conversation in 2013. I started working with them in 2021. That was meeting at the same events. That was trying to send each other referrals and clients and actually kind of pitch for different businesses, learning values, hanging out, learning from each other, solving different problems, talking about life, business, all of that kind of stuff. And then as my world progressed in the corporate space and I was moving away, because I effectively had this kind of, 7 to 8 year track record with the owner of the business, he was first to say, come and join the business. Because he knew who we'd had that social proof, we'd built that relationship outside, and we weren't the best referral partners to each other. If anything, it was token, but we still kind of hung out personally and professionally and learned from each other. He's quite contrarian in the way that he thinks. So another little tip is don't surround yourself with everybody like you that thinks the way you do, because you'll never learn anything. And if you want to do that, just go on social media or all the algorithms serve up what you want. Surround yourself with people that think differently. And business owners, they're the best because they're creative. They think very differently. A lot of early stage business owners are running on passion and adrenaline.
caffeine.
They're the best people to kind of hang out with, because you then get a sense of how it works. That kind of circles back to playing the long game. And I didn't know I was going to be working in real estate when I moved here. I did 18 years in foreign payments. I did a marketing management degree. I fell into foreign payments. I've fallen into real estate, but it's all through relationships. So that's where I say just play the long game and be curious and be you. Be known for something.
It's worth it. So for the VAs that are listening who want to be more intentional with networking, if someone wanted to get more strategic about it over the next 90 days, what would you tell them to focus on first?
I would say look up the local events in your area that are in line with what you want to do, with what your passions are. So let's just start nice and simple, nice and kind of comfortable-ish. If you're a mother, is there a mother's community? Is there a kind of a Facebook community where there's an event, perhaps a morning tea? Perhaps you can host it. If you've got a little community, perhaps you can host it. Maybe go to a local BNI. I mean, that tends to be a very kind of granular way of networking. It's very metric driven, but it's also a good platform to learn how to articulate your pitch. If you like your wine, go to wine tasting sport. Go to something that you feel comfortable talking about that's not your business, because then at least you're talking, and then people will naturally ask. So I think that's probably set yourself a little goal before the end of February. Do 2 of them. And write down who you want to hang out with. Just start to visualize and write down who are your clients. Perhaps how many do you want to have signed up in the first year? I like a BHAG, so big, hairy, audacious goal, but also be realistic. If you think you can get one a month, write down 12, but then maybe put 15. Push yourself, because as momentum carries and word of mouth carries, all of a sudden, you've got to visualize where you want to get to as well. But I think start with a couple of events. Maybe if you've got a partner or a friend, tell them some stories. Just say, ask me how work is. Do a little bit of role play. It seems silly, but if it makes you comfortable, it seems silly going to the gym first time, doesn't it?
I know. Why don't the muscles just appear immediately, right?
I know. But again, with everything, there's always pleasure after the pain. And so you've got to start somewhere. And I would say reframe it. Reframe networking, not selling, it's learning. It's performance based. It's personal growth. It's being uncomfortable. It's being vulnerable. If you were learning to cook, would you set yourself a goal of cooking something new once a month or once a week? Do the same with networking. So attribute it to a high performance behavior that if you want to get to your goal, you have to do it.
And I find that once I started networking, it was really fascinating, well, probably more so when I started my business, that I found conversations were really difficult with people that didn't run their own business. So the normal conversations that I would have with friends that were just in, their normal corporate jobs or their trades or whatever it may be, it made it really hard to connect, because being in business is completely different to being an employee. So once I started networking, I found it, oh my God, I'm finally in a room where people actually understand what I'm talking about. And then I didn't want to leave. I wanted to be in more rooms where I could speak with people that were thinking similar, and they were, growing, and they were focused on growth, because to me, growth is really important, and going somewhere and building something is really important. So I always talk about you need to be in the right room.
100%.
And I think this is what networking will allow you to find, the right room.
Yep. And I would challenge anybody to speak to a business owner and they don't agree that processes and systems are paramount to their business. They are the beating heart. So when you then look at the value that a VA has, they are the beating heart of an organization. So how do we need a heart to work? Yeah. So then going back to your question earlier on about kind of having confidence in what you do, that's what you do. You keep the business going. You enable the salesperson to go out on the road and do the 100 calls a day or the 50 meetings a week or whatever. You're enabling everything else to happen because you've got the systems and processes down pat. That's why you're important. That's why you should walk into a room like you mean it. And that's why you should be curious, because you're integral to that business.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important that the VAs understand and really capture that, because quite often they can feel a little bit, like they're not as important. Like there's a little bit of that self-worth that can pop up occasionally, because quite often people who don't understand what they do go, "Oh, you're just a VA. So you've worked out how to work from home." Like, they cop a lot of that kind of flack at the family barbecues and, "Oh, that's not a real business." So, it's good to actually hear other people see them as the lifeblood of a business when they
Yeah.
support it.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the trajectory of social marketing, digital marketing, you know, that was a very similar reaction and response to, I work in social media. Oh, you just spend all day on Facebook, do you? So I think for people that don't know, they're going to default to what their level of understanding is.
Yes.
And so if their level of understanding is, oh, you just want to work from home, I can imagine, to what you said a minute ago, they're probably not a business owner, you know?
They're definitely not.
And so that's okay. And so I think that's again something to remember. You can't expect everybody to understand what you do that's not really your ideal client, you know? And I'm not saying everybody's your ideal client. You should be pitching your family. I mean, it has been known that I have, but um, but again, it's understanding, I guess, who you take that kind of feedback and not criticism, but that kind of response from.
Yeah.
No. It's a bit like, I'm not going to listen to any of my friends that don't run their own business when they're trying to give me advice about what I do. It's like, why? I appreciate your thoughts and sentiment, but you're kind of not in my shoes. So, you know,
And talk about, don't take advice from someone who's never done what you want to achieve.
yeah, yeah. And what you'll find is the naysayers will bring you down. The entrepreneurs, the business owners, the people that are on your wavelength, they will be like, how can I help?
Yep. It's a
And they're the
completely
people,
different game, different
they're the people
room
you
and a
hang out
different
with.
atmosphere.
Yeah, they're the people you
And
hang out with. Yeah,
yeah, that's right. And that's why I think it was really important to come together today to really talk about networking, because it's not just about getting business. It's about putting yourself in a room with people that just want to help. You know, they just literally want to help, and they've been there, they've done that. Depending on wherever you are on the journey, there's always someone in the room who's further down the track. So, there's someone who's always been there, done that, and solved that problem already. So it just makes things so much easier, and it gives you so much more confidence in your business journey.
agreed,
Yeah,
agreed. So remember, it's not selling, it's asking questions, and
that's
it's a
right.
high performance sport.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So before we wrap up, if you had to sum up an effective networking in one principle, well, I think you've just done that. But it's a high performance sport, and it's about being curious and asking questions.
Yeah, and
Um,
be authentic. Be authentic.
be
Be
authentic.
authentic. And there's nothing wrong with going to an event. And this is about being vulnerable. What I spoke about earlier. Hey, this is my first event. Tell the person, "Hi, I'm John. This is my first event. What's this about? I've never done this before." And very rarely would someone just turn around and walk away. And if they do, you're in the wrong room. To your point a minute ago, you're in the wrong room, which is a great indicator. Thank you so much. I would not spend any more time with this lot. But if you are, again, if when you're vulnerable with someone, normally it's matched. It's greeted with an open arm or something warm, right? So again, hey, where do I go? This is my first time here. Is there name tags or what happens? Someone will always be able to help you in the room. But I think the biggest thing, just be authentic.
Well, you can't be anyone else, right?
Can't be anyone else, and everybody else is taken.
That's right. So, John, this has been such a powerful reframing of networking, especially for the VAs who have stepped into leadership and higher value work. So, thank you so much for sharing your experience and insight for our listeners. And if this episode shifted how you think about networking and relationships and opportunity, please share it with another VA who needs to hear it. And I'll see you in the next episode of the VA Rebellion podcast. Thanks for coming, Jon.
Very welcome. Thank you.